Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to a rather fun little video giving you guys my top 5 NIL cheating teams, the teams that have really weaponized the NIL in terms of recruiting only. This is strictly based on recruiting high school kids. It's very complicated. We've got the transfer portal stuff. I want to give a few honorable mentions and then give my top 5 teams that have just gone completely off the rails, like they're offering kids millions of dollars. I've got some funny stories and things like that, but a few honorable mentions I want to talk about. First, the Jackson State situation. So obviously I'm not going to include Jackson State specifically on this list, but first of all, nobody talks about this. Florida State got screwed. Florida State had the number 1 overall player in the entire country committed for 2 years. And then on National Signing Day, he flips to Jackson State because he gets a $3 million NIL deal with Deion Sanders and whatever company they partnered with to get him to Jackson State. I will say there was a rumor going around that he's just going to Jackson State for a year. He's going to be transferring back to Florida State. He just wanted the NIL deal. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if he can do that. But people don't talk about enough how just screwed Florida. I understand, he's going to a smaller school, so, boo-hoo, Florida State, whatever. But they got legitimate. They had the number 1 player in the country committed for 2 years. And then on National Signing Day, when he's supposed to sign with your team, he flips because of a $3 million deal to Jackson State. Oh, it's crazy. I just had to include Jackson State as an honorable mention. Obviously, they're not going to be top 5, but they are an honorable mention. Also, the USC situation, this is based off of just recruits, not off of the transfer portal. We know the situation with Jordan Addison. It's disgusting. There was very likely tampering involved. You probably had a USC booster approach him, say, listen, you can get $3 million in a beachfront house if you hit the transfer portal and come here. Now Jordan Addison is in the transfer portal. We'll see if he ends up going to USC. But the reason USC is not on my list is because this is strictly based off of recruiting high school kids, not recruiting in terms of transfer portal. So USC, I know they've gotten off to a great start in the 2023 class with Malachi Nelson, the 5-star quarterback, but he really just followed Lincoln Riley to USC. He was originally committed to Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley was there. I don't think NIL had much involved in there. That's just Lincoln Riley's quarterback development, and there hasn't been any rumors, or maybe there were a little bit of rumors of an NIL deal, but I'm not going to have USC on my top 5 just because they haven't come up a lot. And then another program, a lot of people asking like Alabama, Ohio State, I'm sure they're all cheating. If you're a casual fan, I'm sure you think of the University of like Alabama, they're probably blatantly cheating. They're probably paying kids. In terms of NIL, I really don't think that's the case. And I haven't, seen one specific player where, they've paid to get him to come to their school. What Alabama will do is they will pay for a transfer portal recruit. They gave Eli Ricks, the former 5-star from LSU, $1 million to transfer there. He's going into his junior season, and he will very likely be a starting cornerback on Alabama this coming year, and he's being mocked in all the first rounds. He's a stud, but the reason a team like Alabama, a team like Ohio State, they are against paying recruits straight up, high school recruits, straight up money to come to their school. Another team that's very hard to gauge is Georgia. Now, Georgia, before the entire NIL thing, or NIL, excuse me, I always call it NLI. NIL, before that whole thing happened, Georgia, I would say Georgia was the number 1 team that cheated the most, I would think. But since that's come about, it's very hard to tell with Georgia in terms of who they're paying and who they're not because they have so much in-state talent. The state of Georgia is one of the most talent-rich states in the entire country. It's right up there with California. It's right up there with Florida. So when a kid from Georgia commits to Georgia, it's not surprising. It's not like, well, how much did they pay him? He's from Georgia. So it's tough to get a read on that team, but that's why they're not on the list. But when it comes to the top 5 overall teams, this is my list. So number 5 is going to be Florida University. Now, Florida in the 2022 class didn't do a lot of this, but they've really ramped up their NIL game for 2023. And the 2 key prospects to look at are going to be A.J. Harris, who's had a very interesting recruitment. He's a 5-star cornerback from the state of Georgia, as well as Cormani McClain, who is the number 3 overall player. He's another cornerback from the state of Florida. And when it comes to A.J. Harris, it's really interesting because his original top 2 was Ohio State and Clemson. And then suddenly there was a major shift in his recruitment. And out of nowhere, Florida became the team to beat. Now, what I think happened is A.J. Harris told these college programs he wants a little bit of this NIL money. And Ohio State and Clemson, they don't play that. They say you can make the NIL money, but you got to be on campus first. Florida takes over. They're a team that is desperate right now. They had a bad 2022 class. They're look out for them in 2023. They come in at number 5. Moving on down to number 4, it's going to be the University of Oregon. And I want to talk about a very interesting recruitment of Josh Connerly Jr., an offensive tackle from the state of Washington. He's a 5-star, the number 15 overall player in the 2022 class. He actually didn't sign on National Signing Day, so his recruitment went even longer past National Signing Day. Everyone thought he was going to USC, and then out of nowhere, he signs on with Oregon. We know Oregon has a ton of money with Nike. They are big players in the NIL front. I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if this kid did not get a major deal. Everyone, all the insiders, the recruiting insiders, everyone thought he was going to USC. He ends up going to Oregon, and I'm guessing he got a major deal. And the one prospect to watch for 2023 when it comes to Oregon on recruiting is a 5-star quarterback from the state of Michigan, Dante Moore. Now, this kid, Notre Dame wants him, Michigan obviously wants him, but this is a very interesting scenario where Dante Moore is currently considering Oregon, and Oregon may throw a massive NIL deal out there to reel him in. It would be so weird, a 5-star quarterback from the state of Michigan going to Oregon. Very unique, but it's an interesting prospect to watch. Oregon is big on the NIL front. Moving on down to number 3 on my list of the biggest NIL cheaters, it's gonna be Texas. We know how on to number 3 on my list in terms of NIL biggest cheaters. It is Texas. We know how desperate Texas is at this point. They're moving to the SEC. The schedule's only going to get harder. I want to talk about a 2022 recruit that flipped to Texas on National Signing Day, Terrence Brooks. Now, Terrence Brooks was originally committed to Ohio State. I understand Ohio State fired their defensive coordinator and hired a new one, but overall, there was a rumored NIL deal to where Texas just straight up stole this top 100 cornerback from Ohio State. They gave him reportedly $50,000 to go to Texas. That is Terrence Brooks, and I'm sure Texas has offered Arch Manning, the number 1 recruit in 2023, money. Now, Arch Manning obviously doesn't need the money with his family being the Mannings. He doesn't need NIL money, but I'm sure they've offered it to him. Texas is desperate at this point. We understand they don't have a lot to sell. Steve Sarkisian, he doesn't have a great track record. He's developed guys, but he's mainly developed guys at other schools like Alabama. Him as a head coach has not gone well. So Texas, they've got a lot of boosters. They've got a lot of oil money. They're using it. They know the schedule only gets tougher. You move to the SEC, you're going to pay for guys. They are blatantly paying for guys using NIL. You can't fault them. They're desperate. They are desperate, but Texas, the Terrence Brooks situation was crazy. They come in at number 3 on my list. Moving on down to number 2. I'm pretty sure most people know what number 2 and number 1 are here. It's just what's the order, but Number 2 on my list, it's the University of Tennessee, and it comes down to the 5-star quarterback in 2023 from the state of California. They currently have committed. He is the number 6 overall player in the nation, and the rumor deal that this kid got was a multi-year $8 million deal. Now, how they broker and separate these deals is very interesting. Due to the transfer portal, the boosters, to make sure they don't get screwed out of money, this kid probably got a deal to where it's like he gets $2 million as a freshman, $2 million as a sophomore, $3 million as a junior, something like that, to where it's a multi-year NIL deal. That's what it is. He basically signs an NIL contract. That's why this whole thing is so dirty. It's so ridiculous. Is there a world where this 5-star top 10 overall player from the state of California would even be considering Tennessee without NIL? I don't think so. I don't think this kid even gives Tennessee that's a second thought without NIL. So NIL is giving Tennessee a chance here. They sign a superstar quarter, or they're maybe gonna sign. It is 2023, but apparently there's been a few contracts that have been signed with this kid in Tennessee, an $8 million deal. That's the biggest contract I've ever heard. And then the other key, this is a very interesting recruitment to look at. Carnell Tate, who is a 5-star receiver, or I think he's a high 4-star maybe, very close to being a 5-star receiver, one of the top receivers in the country, originally from the Midwest, from Illinois. He moved down to Florida because he's at IMG Academy, and it was looking like it was a Midwest battle between Ohio State and Notre Dame before the NIL stuff, kicked in. Now it is strictly a Tennessee-Ohio State battle, and this is name, image, likeness versus Brian Hartline versus development. Do you want to go the development route? Go to Ohio State. Do you want to get the money right away? Go to Tennessee. So it's going to be a very interesting recruitment to follow what this kid does. He's a superstar receiver. Ohio State really wants him. Without NIL, I think this kid's already a Buckeye commit. I think he's already a Buckeye. But because of this, because they're offering him money, they're using the whole pitch. You could turn around Tennessee. We'll give you a 7-figure contract of about $2 or $3 million. Tennessee is deep in the NIL. That's the thing with programs like Texas and Tennessee. They're desperate. You're going to see these programs dig deep with their boosters. They need other things rather than just normal recruiting, to entice players to come there, because on a level playing field, you're Tennessee, you're going up against Brian Hartline, you're going up against Ohio State, you're going up against a program that just put 2 receivers into the first round and are going to put another receiver in the first round in 2023 in Jackson Smith-Njigba, possibly 2 more receivers in the first round in 2024 in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka. You are going up against a superpower program, especially when it comes to producing wide receivers at an elite level. You need every booster, figuratively and literally, you can get. And their big booster is the NIL, paying Carnell Tate. Ohio State doesn't want to do it like that. They want you to make the NIL, but not until you get on campus. That's the thing, like we're stressing, the NIL should be an on-campus amenity. That's what it should be. You shouldn't be going to a school just because the booster's paying you money like this 5-star quarterback is with Tennessee, and then maybe Carnell Tate. So we'll have to see what happens there. But they come in at number 2, and then number 1, can it be anyone else but good old Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M, who signed the greatest recruiting class of all time in 2022. Unbelievable, guys. Which recruit, you look at Texas A&M's 2022 class, which recruitment do you want me to pick? Which recruitment, the better question is, which recruitment wasn't dirty? The Walter Nolan one, the 5-star defensive tackle from Tennessee was extremely dirty. Stewart, the 5-star pass rusher from Florida. Evan Stewart, another 5-star receiver from Texas. I'm sure he got money. Gabriel Brownlow Diddy. I'm sure he got paid. This is the best one. LT Overton. Now, a lot of people don't know the story behind this kid. This kid was originally in the 2023 class. He was ranked as the number 3 overall player. He reclassified to 2022, and they slotted him at number 18 overall, but it gets better than that. So this kid's in the 2023 class. Texas A&M signs their Texas A&M signs the best defensive line class haul of all time in 2022. This kid's still in the 2023 class at that time. He reclassifies to 2022. And then he signs with Texas A&M. So they already had the greatest defensive line haul of all time in college football recruiting history. And then they got the number 3 overall player from 2023 to reclassify to 2022, where he was ranked at 18th overall, still a 5-star, and they signed him as well. That is the best one. That is an all-timer, the all-time best NIL situation. You sign the greatest defensive line class of all time. If you're LT Overton, you probably don't want to go there. You're not going to get much playing time, but because they're offering you money, you go there. It is so, like, that whole story, it's probably the best NIL story. NIL story overall. It is crazy. It's like, you already signed the greatest class, but no, go convince the 2023 number 1 overall defensive pass rusher to reclassify to 2022 and then sign him as well. Like, that's how ridiculous it got. And it's funny with, Texas A&M. They're always going to be number 1 because it's a crazy class. It really is. And NIL was extremely helpful in them getting it. You had some programs really utilize the NIL in 2022. Texas A&M was. You're going to have programs really start getting into it in 2023. The programs to look out for: Miami, Florida. Those 2 programs, I think, are really going to get into the NIL in terms of 2023 prospects. We will see what happens. It is crazy out there, guys, but just giving you guys my top 5 list of just the craziest NIL teams. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.